They told you to be kind. They told you to be gentle, understanding, and generous. They told you that kindness always comes back, that the world rewards the good-hearted. But what if they were wrong? What if your kindness is the very thing that's destroying you? What if the same virtue that made Marcus Aurelius wise, that gave Epictetus his strength, has been twisted, used against you until it left you weak, resentful, and empty? This isn't just philosophy. This is real life. Kindness is a virtue in Stoicism, yes, but it is not a naive smile. It is not saying yes to everything. It is not being everyone's emotional sponge. True kindness, the kind practiced by the Stoics, is rooted in justice and reason, not people-pleasing. And today, on Stoicism, we're going to break it down. You'll discover 9 brutally honest ways kindness, when misunderstood or misapplied, can ruin your peace, your boundaries, and even your purpose. You'll learn why being too nice can destroy your self-respect, how emotional generosity can make you a magnet for manipulators, what Epictetus would say about always trying to keep the peace, and why Stoic kindness requires something far tougher than just being agreeable. This isn't an invitation to become cold or cruel. Stoicism never taught that. This is an invitation to reclaim the true power of virtue, not the watered-down version the world sells you. So if you've ever felt taken for granted, if you've ever wondered why people don't value your softness, or worse, exploit it, if you've tried to be good only to end up exhausted, disrespected, or invisible, then this video is for you. And stay with me until the end, because the final point is not just a lesson, it's a warning, a reality that most people ignore until it's too late. In fact, it might just be the most powerful Stoic truth you'll hear all year. And one more thing, before we dive in, I want you to participate. Drop this phrase in the comments below. Kindness without strength is surrender. Type it, declare it, make it real. This is Stoicism, and this is how we reclaim ancient wisdom for a ruthless modern world. Let's begin. Lesson 9. Kindness without discernment invites predators. Narration for Stoicism, 1600 plus words. In the wild, weakness is hunted. In the world of men, it's no different. You may believe you're being kind. You may believe that giving people the benefit of the doubt is noble, that forgiving endlessly is a sign of character, that lowering your guard is a sign of strength. But here's the truth. Unfiltered kindness is not virtue, it's exposure. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Nowhere in that does he suggest to let others dictate your energy, your time, or your dignity. Yet that is exactly what many do in the name of kindness. You let people talk over you. You say, "It's okay," when it clearly isn't. You silence your instincts to keep others comfortable. You hold in your truth to avoid conflict, and all the while, you erode. Not because you are kind, but because your kindness lacks discernment. It lacks boundaries. It lacks the one thing that the Stoics demanded of every virtue, wisdom. Because Stoicism is not about being liked, it's about being anchored. Let's get this straight. A Stoic is not passive. He's not a doormat. He's not someone who says yes to everything to avoid confrontation. A Stoic knows that virtue must be paired with judgment. He doesn't just act with kindness. He chooses who, how, and when. Epictetus warned us clearly, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because when you begin to protect your energy, when you say no, when you hold others accountable, you will be misunderstood. You will be judged, but that is not your concern. Your concern is to remain internally strong, clear, and in harmony with your nature. And your nature, as a rational being, is not to be devoured. Here's the brutal truth. Some people feed on kindness. They test it. They stretch it. They see how much they can extract from you, your time, your energy, your empathy, and if you let them, they'll take everything and call you kind as they walk away with your peace. This is not pessimism. This is preparation. This is not bitterness. This is clarity. Kindness without discernment is like leaving your doors open in a storm, thinking it makes you brave. It doesn't. It makes you exposed. So what does Stoic kindness really look like? It is measured. It is intentional. It is anchored in reason, not emotion. It does not abandon self-respect in the name of compassion. It does not serve every request just because it can. It does not fear saying no. If you are constantly drained, constantly ignored, constantly saying it's fine when it's not, then you're not being kind. You're abandoning yourself. Seneca said, "No man was ever wise by chance. Neither is a man truly kind by accident. You must choose who is worthy of your time. You must decide who earns your trust. You must train yourself to distinguish between those who seek support and those who seek supply. This doesn't mean you become paranoid or cold. It means you become precise. Let me be clear. Your kindness is sacred, but it must be guarded. Your empathy is a strength, but it must be guided. Your time is a gift, but it must be given with care, not scattered like crumbs to every hungry hand. Because the world doesn't just test your anger, it tests your mercy. It doesn't just test your power, it tests your softness. And unless you pair that softness with structure, that mercy with measure, that kindness with clarity, you will be devoured. People will call you the nice one right before they ask for one more favor, push one more boundary, and offer one more empty thank you. A Stoic draws the line, not with rage, not with drama, but with reason. And when they ask, "Why not?" he calmly replies, "Because I am not here to be consumed." That is virtue. That is power. That is kindness fortified. If this spoke to you, drop this phrase in the comments. Discipline, mercy is true strength. And get ready, because lesson number 8 will strike even deeper. It's about how kindness can quietly destroy your identity and how to reclaim it. Lesson 8. Kindness can make you forget who you are. There is a silent danger hidden within the modern interpretation of kindness. A danger more corrosive than open hostility, more destructive than outright malice. It is the erosion of self. It does not arrive violently. It does not shatter you in a moment. Instead, it seeps in quietly, wearing down your identity in microscopic acts of self-betrayal. You begin with good intentions. You want to be kind, to be helpful, to make others feel safe around you. You want to be the one who brings peace, who softens tension, who makes things easier. So you start saying yes a little more often. You suppress your preferences. You make room for other people's moods. And little by little, without even noticing, you disappear. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to return to reason, to act in alignment with nature, to uphold virtue not only in thought but in form. He never said to be agreeable at the expense of the soul. He never instructed us to mold ourselves endlessly into others' expectations. Yet this is what modern kindness demands: compliance, silence, self-abandonment in the name of harmony. The irony is brutal. By trying to be kind to everyone, you become less of yourself to everyone, until you are no longer sure what you believe, what you stand for, what you actually want. You become fog, shapeable, palatable, lost. The Stoics did not see kindness as weakness, but they never detached it from identity. Epictetus was emphatic. You must know who you are before you extend yourself to the world. Without that foundation, your kindness is not virtue, it is surrender. You start to tailor your tone to the room. You rehearse the version of yourself that will least offend. You measure every opinion through the lens of acceptability. You learn the art of gentle suppression, and over time, this becomes your life. Soft words, quiet resentment, No edges, no boundaries, no fire. What remains is not peace. It is numbness. And worse, it is confusion. You start to doubt yourself. You begin to wonder if maybe you're overreacting, if maybe being tired all the time is normal, if maybe always giving without reciprocation is just the cost of being a good person. But deep down, something in you is screaming. A subtle fury builds, and yet you tell yourself again and again that kindness matters more, that it's better to give in than to disrupt the balance. That being the bigger person means swallowing your voice, and so you keep smiling while fading. Stoicism does not accept this. Stoicism calls this exactly what it is, a distortion of virtue, because real kindness cannot come from fear. Real kindness does not bloom from self-neglect. Real kindness, in the Stoic sense, is the extension of a rooted self, not a hollow one. To be truly kind, you must first be whole. You must first be clear. You must first know where you end and where others begin. Otherwise, you're not being kind. You're simply vanishing under the weight of your own inability to say no. Seneca warned us, "He who tries to be everywhere is nowhere." The same is true of identity. If you try to be everything for everyone, you become no one to yourself. The cost of this is massive. It shows up in your fatigue, your quiet rage, your declining joy, your sense of aimlessness. It shows up in how you talk to yourself at night, in how little you ask of others, in how much you tolerate. And at some point it breaks you, not loudly, but in silence. You realize you've gone so far in your effort to be nice that you don't even remember what your own preferences feel like. You've mistaken acceptance for belonging. You've mistaken invisibility for virtue. But the Stoic path offers a way back. It calls you to return, not to what you were, but to what is real. It asks you to strip away the performance, to abandon the compulsive agreement, to reclaim your shape. It tells you that discomfort is not the enemy, loss of self is. That being misunderstood is not a failure, betraying your principles is. That saying no is not cruelty, it is clarity. And that real kindness, virtue-aligned kindness, is sharp, it is deliberate. It flows from conviction, not fear. It respects others without discarding the self. If you've been nodding through conversations you hate, if you've been offering help from an empty tank, if you've been carrying burdens just to be seen as good, this is your moment to stop. Not because you are bitter, but because you are ready to live with strength. The world does not need another agreeable ghost. It needs men and women who are kind, because they are solid, because they are principled, because they know exactly who they are. That is Stoicism. That is power. That is true kindness. If you felt the truth in these words, write this in the comments. I am not here to disappear. And get ready, because lesson number 7 will strike even deeper. It reveals how kindness can quietly destroy your boundaries and how Stoic discipline can rebuild them with unshakable strength. Lesson 7. Kindness can destroy your boundaries without you noticing. There is a subtle violence that hides inside unchecked kindness, not the kind that others commit against you, but the kind you commit against yourself. It begins with good intentions. You want to help, you want to support, you want to be available, approachable, warm, and so you say yes. You listen when you're exhausted. You forgive what hasn't been acknowledged. You offer time you don't have, energy you can't afford, space you don't own. You cross one small line for the sake of peace, then another and another, until the map of your life no longer belongs to you, until the very shape of your days has been rewritten by everything you never resisted. And you look around and wonder, how did I get here? The Stoics would tell you, slowly, quietly, invisibly, not through betrayal, not through crisis, but through neglect, through the soft erosion of boundaries disguised as virtue, through the repeated abandonment of what you knew you needed, just to avoid the discomfort of saying no. Epictetus was clear, A man who cannot say no is a man who cannot be free. But modern kindness teaches the opposite. It teaches you to say yes before you think. It teaches you to offer more than is asked. It teaches you to accept behavior that drains you and call it compassion. And so your life becomes a series of leaks. You are giving, but from a wound. You are serving, but from depletion. You are being kind, but in truth, you are bleeding out. You start to feel it in your resentment, in the heaviness in your chest when another request arrives, in the smile you force when your gut says run. You hear yourself say, "Of course," when everything in you screams, "Not again." And yet you say it because somewhere along the line, you were taught that kindness is boundless, that love means tolerance, that being good means never refusing. But the Stoics would challenge that idea with brutal precision. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Sometimes the barrier you need is not between you and the world. It's between your impulse to please and your duty to protect your peace. Kindness without boundaries is not sustainable. It is a slow self-erasure. Because every time you let someone cross a line you never speak of, you confirm to yourself that your needs are optional. Every time you sacrifice your stillness just to keep someone else happy, you train your mind to fear confrontation more than exhaustion. Every time you offer more than you should just to avoid disappointing someone, you build a life that belongs more to others than to yourself. This is not generosity. This is quiet self-abandonment. And it is not noble. It is not stoic. It is not strength. The Stoics did not teach emotional martyrdom. They taught agency. They taught clarity. They taught that virtue is only possible through choice, and you cannot choose anything when your boundaries are so soft they dissolve the moment pressure arrives. Real kindness, then, must be firm. It must have a spine. It must come from a person who has defined their limits, not one who waits for them to be trampled. To rebuild your boundaries, you must first admit they've been broken, not with guilt, but with honesty. You must trace the places where you've said yes when you meant no. You must feel the fatigue of every moment you gave what you didn't want to give. You must face the part of yourself that believes conflict is worse than resentment. And then you must begin, slowly, clearly, to draw the lines again. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with truth. You are not a wall, but you are not a river either. You are not here to flood into every open space. You are here to stand with presence, to offer wisely, to protect the vessel from which all virtue flows. Your time is not infinite, your energy is not disposable. Your peace is not a public resource. It is your responsibility to guard them. That is not selfishness, that is stewardship. The next time you feel guilt rising in your chest when you decline, remember this, that guilt is not your enemy. It is the withdrawal symptom from years of overgiving. Feel it, let it pass. Do not let it drive you. And when someone asks for more than you can give, do not shrink, do not explain endlessly, do not apologize for having limits, simply state them and breathe. You have nothing to prove. A Stoic does not abandon kindness, but a Stoic does not weaponize it against himself either. True kindness flows from strength, not desperation. It respects others, but it also respects the self. It does not sacrifice the inner citadel just to decorate someone else's castle. If you understand this, if you've lived this, if you're ready to reclaim your edges, then type this in the comments. Boundaries are kindness to myself. And stay close, because in lesson number 6, we'll expose how kindness, when driven by fear, can become the very thing that chains your freedom and dulls your courage. Lesson 6. Fear-driven kindness is a prison in disguise. There is a kind of kindness that does not come from virtue. It comes from fear. It is not a conscious deception, but a quiet reflex, so deeply wired into the nervous system that it feels like morality. You say yes because you're afraid to be disliked. You give because you're afraid to seem cold. You offer your silence because you fear that speaking will make things worse. This is not kindness. This is survival disguised as goodness. And over time, it becomes a prison so well furnished that you forget you're locked inside. The Stoics taught that fear is not to be obeyed. It is to be examined. Epictetus was unflinching in this. He said we suffer not from the things themselves, but from our judgments about them. Yet modern kindness has become so tangled with approval-seeking that we can no longer tell the difference. We confuse submission for compassion. We confuse appeasement for empathy. We smile to prevent rejection. We tolerate to prevent isolation. And in doing so, we mistake cowardice for virtue. Fear-driven kindness is not sustainable. It comes with a cost, and the invoice is always internal. You may seem calm on the surface, but your inner world is filled with noise, second-guessing, overthinking, low-level resentment. You go to bed thinking about what you should have said, what you wish you didn't agree to, what you fear people now expect. You play back every interaction like a courtroom, examining whether your performance was gentle enough, generous enough, soft enough to keep the peace. But the peace is not real. It's rented, and the lease is paid in self-denial. A Stoic does not make decisions from fear. He may feel it, but he does not bow to it. Marcus Aurelius faced war, plague, and political unrest, yet his compass remained anchored in logos, reason, nature, virtue, not emotion, not ego, not the fear of being misunderstood. He never wrote about pleasing everyone. He wrote about doing what was right, because doing what is right is often uncomfortable. It invites friction, it creates tension, it draws lines that others may not like. And fear-driven kindness, by definition, avoids all of that. It chooses comfort over character. Let's be clear, there is a massive difference between true kindness and compulsive compliance. True kindness says, I will help because I choose to. Fear-driven kindness says, I must help or they'll think I'm bad. That distinction is everything. One comes from power, the other comes from anxiety. One creates boundaries, the other dissolves them. One is sustainable, the other slowly empties you out. And most dangerously, fear-driven kindness trains others not to respect you, but to rely on your silence. People can feel when your kindness is forced. They may thank you, they may smile, but deep down they sense it, and without even meaning to, they begin to expect it, and you, trapped by your own fear of conflict, continue to provide it. You become indispensable in all the wrong ways, always available, always agreeable, always exhausted, and inside your soul begins to rebel. Not with violence, but with quiet withdrawal. You become numb, tired, bitter, but you keep smiling because the fear of rupture still outweighs the desire for truth. But Stoicism teaches you to invert this. It says that truth, even when it costs peace, is more honorable than peace built on self-erasure. It tells you that courage is not a dramatic gesture. It is 1,000 small acts of saying what you mean, choosing what you value, and risking discomfort to remain in integrity. It tells you that real peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of alignment between your values and your actions. That is the difference between slavery and freedom. That is the difference between fear-driven kindness and stoic virtue. So what do you do when you notice that your kindness is coming from fear? You pause, you interrogate the fear, you ask, if I say no, what am I afraid will happen? Then you trace that fear to its source. Is it abandonment, judgment, shame? Whatever it is, you face it. You bring reason to it. You remind yourself that your life is not a hostage negotiation. You do not owe comfort to every person who asks for it. You owe clarity to yourself. That is your first loyalty. Then you act. Slowly at first. Maybe it starts with a boundary spoken aloud. Maybe it's one honest sentence you've been avoiding. Maybe it's letting someone be disappointed. And when the fear rises in your throat, you meet it. not with aggression, but with breath, with presence, with the reminder that every time you act from courage, you reclaim a piece of your soul. And over time, you find that your kindness becomes deeper, stronger, truer, not because you fear rejection, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. That is Stoic kindness, not performative, not reactive, not rooted in fear. It is active, chosen, deliberate. It is love expressed through strength. It is truth spoken with calm. It is no longer about being seen as good. It is about being good, even if no one notices, even if some people don't like it, even if it costs you applause. If this speaks to your experience, if you've been living too long in the cage of approval, write this in the comments. I choose clarity over approval. And get ready, because in lesson number 5, we'll uncover how excessive kindness can keep you trapped in toxic dynamics and why Stoic justice demands more than just turning the other cheek. Lesson 5. Kindness can keep you trapped in toxic dynamics. There is a painful truth that many avoid because it challenges the very image they hold of themselves. It is this: your kindness may be the reason the dysfunction around you survives. Not because you are weak, not because you are naive, but because your instinct to preserve relationships, avoid pain, or maintain harmony has made you tolerant of what should have been confronted, silent where you should have spoken, and loyal to what has long ceased to deserve your presence. The Stoics would not have called this kindness. They would have called it a failure to act in accordance with reason and justice. Because justice, in Stoic thought, is not passive. It is not mere tolerance. It is the expression of virtue through right action. And sometimes, right action means ending what poisons you. When you allow toxic behavior to continue unchecked in the name of kindness, you become a silent accomplice to your own erosion. You absorb the emotional debris of others, convincing yourself that you are strong enough to carry it. You excuse disrespect because they didn't mean it. You rationalize abuse because they've been through a lot. You minimize your own suffering because you don't want to cause drama. And over time, this becomes your pattern. Normalize dysfunction, rename pain as patience, and call it maturity. But it is not maturity. It is avoidance dressed as compassion. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." But that does not mean to remain in the presence of injury. That does not mean to keep opening the door to the same harm over and over just to prove you are not bitter. Stoic virtue is not self-destruction. It is not moral superiority through self-sacrifice. It is alignment with nature, and nature does not thrive in toxic soil. A Stoic knows this. He does not pretend that all relationships are sacred. He does not cling to the ideal that people will change if he just loves harder. He knows that wisdom includes the courage to walk away, not in anger, but in clarity. Fear will tell you to stay. Guilt will tell you it's your job to fix them. Hope will whisper that maybe this time will be different. But reason, pure, quiet reason, will ask, does this nourish your soul or does it drain it? Epictetus warned us not to attach ourselves to what is outside our control, and that includes the behavior of others. You cannot love someone into being less cruel. You cannot support someone out of their dysfunction if they are committed to staying there. You cannot replace their self-awareness with your sacrifice. And the more you try, the more you lose yourself in the process. There is nothing noble about staying in an environment that corrodes your dignity. There is nothing kind about enabling behavior that harms both you and the person acting it out. Because every time you tolerate disrespect, you teach them that it is acceptable. Every time you cushion their consequences, you interrupt their growth. Every time you remain silent, you betray your values. And slowly, almost invisibly, you become complicit in the very dynamic you claim to oppose. The Stoics teach us to remain anchored, not enslaved. They teach us to care, but without attachment. They teach us to engage, but without surrendering our reason. So when you find yourself tangled in a relationship that brings more confusion than clarity, more pain than peace, more exhaustion than elevation, you must ask yourself, am I staying because of virtue or because of fear? And if the answer is fear, fear of being alone, fear of confrontation, fear of disappointing someone, then your kindness has become a chain. You are not here to save people who refuse to swim. You are not here to offer endless compassion to those who weaponize your softness. You are not here to validate someone's destructive patterns just because you understand their pain. Understanding is not agreement. Forgiveness is not permission. Compassion is not an invitation to be destroyed. A Stoic acts from integrity, not guilt. He lets go when the situation no longer aligns with his values. He draws lines not to punish, but to preserve what is sacred within. Leaving toxic dynamics is not the opposite of kindness. It is the highest form of it, because it honors your responsibility to the self. It reclaims your energy for what matters. It forces others to face their own consequences. And in that void, in that absence, there is sometimes the only hope for real change. People do not grow when you shield them from themselves. They grow when they are finally required to confront the result of their own behavior. If you've been trapped in the cycle of overextending, over-forgiving, over-explaining, then this lesson is for you. You are allowed to leave what harms you. You are allowed to choose peace over history. You are allowed to end relationships that violate your boundaries. And you are allowed to do it without fanfare, without explanation, without guilt. If you've ever stayed too long in something that wounded you, type this in the comments. Walking away is also kindness. And stay tuned, because in lesson number 4, we'll confront one of the most overlooked dangers, how constantly giving can lead to deep resentment, and why the Stoics warned against the slow poison of unspoken expectations. Lesson 4. Unbalanced giving breeds silent resentment. There is a point where giving becomes dangerous, not because the act itself is wrong, but because it becomes disconnected from reciprocity, intention, and truth. You begin with the best of intentions. You give your time, you offer your attention, you extend patience when others are short with you. You show up when they cancel, listen when they dismiss, stay when they drift. And for a while, you convince yourself that this is what it means to be good. That love is unconditional, that kindness requires nothing in return, but beneath the surface, something begins to shift. You grow tired, quietly at first, then bitter, and still you keep giving. Until eventually, the giving no longer feels like generosity. It feels like a debt you're being forced to pay with the currency of your own silence. The Stoics were clear. A virtuous act must be voluntary. It must come from reason and alignment with nature, not compulsion, guilt, or expectation. Epictetus warned, if you want to be a person of virtue, you must stop caring what others think of you. And yet this is the trap that many fall into. They give to be seen as kind, to avoid the discomfort of saying no, to protect an image they have built around being the good one. The problem is not giving. It is the imbalance. It is the constant outflow with no return. It is the slow erosion of self that happens when your cup is always tilted toward others and never refilled. You don't notice it at first. You tell yourself that you're strong enough to keep going. You say things like, it's fine, I don't mind, or they're just going through something, or they didn't mean it. But over time, the excuses begin to collapse under the weight of your own unmet needs. You begin to feel invisible, not because others don't care, but because you trained them not to. You taught them that your time is always available, that your help is automatic, that your needs are always secondary. And when you finally begin to feel the sting of resentment, you turn inward and call it weakness. You tell yourself to toughen up, to be more generous, to expect less. But this is not Stoic virtue, it is emotional martyrdom. Resentment is not weakness, it is information. It is your inner compass telling you that something is off, that the scales have tipped too far, that your giving is no longer pure, it has become polluted by unspoken expectations. Expectations that others will reciprocate, that they will notice your sacrifices, that they will offer the same care in return. But when they do not, your spirit begins to crack, not because they failed you, but because you failed to set the terms, because you gave without limit, hoping that they would recognize your limits on their own. That is not virtue, that is gambling with your emotional health. Marcus Aurelius never said to give endlessly. He said to do your duty, to live in accordance with nature, and to be just. And justice requires proportion. It requires structure. It requires the balance of give and receive, of presence and absence, of speech and silence. A Stoic does not give to be validated. He gives because it is right. And when it is no longer right, he stops. He understands that depletion is not noble, that a burned-out soul cannot serve, that a quiet building resentment is not a flaw, it is a warning. If you give more than you speak, if you tolerate more than you feel good about, if you find yourself exhausted by the very people you once found joy in helping, then it is time to pause. Time to stop calling it kindness when what you are really doing is abandoning yourself to protect the feelings of others. Time to recognize that your exhaustion is not a mystery, it is the cost of giving in all directions except inward. So what does Stoic giving look like? It is measured. It is deliberate. It is offered with open hands and no strings, but it is not endless. It respects both the other and the self. It is not afraid to say, I have nothing more to give right now. It does not fear withdrawal. It does not operate from fear or habit. It comes from clarity, from the understanding that your value is not defined by how much you do for others, that your worth is not measured by how much of yourself you are willing to sacrifice. Giving must be anchored in wisdom. If it is not, it will turn against you, and the worst part is you won't even know it until it's too late, until the joy is gone, the light is dimmed, and the bitterness has settled like dust in your chest. But it's not too late to clean it out, to reset, to reclaim the part of you that gave out of fullness, not out of pressure, to speak what you need, not with anger, but with steadiness, to begin again with the strength to give only from wholeness and never again from guilt. If this lesson hit a place inside you that's been ignored for too long, write this in the comments. Giving without clarity is self-betrayal. And stay close, because in lesson number 3, we'll expose how people-pleasing disguised as kindness can become a direct betrayal of your own values, and why a Stoic must never allow popularity to override principle. Lesson 3. People-pleasing is not kindness, it's a betrayal of your values. There is a form of kindness that wears a beautiful mask, but hides a terrible truth beneath it. It's not driven by compassion. It's not born of virtue. It doesn't rise from the clarity of a centered soul. It comes from fear, specifically the fear of disapproval. You smile, agree, accommodate, support, but not because it is right, not because it is in line with your values. You do it because you are terrified of what will happen if you don't. This is not kindness, this is people-pleasing. And to the Stoic mind, it is among the most dangerous betrayals, not of others, but of the self. The Stoics never sought popularity. They sought alignment with nature and reason. Marcus Aurelius ruled over an empire in chaos, yet he wrote not of winning admiration, but of staying loyal to his inner compass. He said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And no pain is more subtle or more corrosive than the pain of living against your own values for the sake of being liked." Because it begins slowly. First you nod at something you don't agree with, then you say yes to something that makes you uncomfortable, then you remain silent in the face of injustice just to avoid tension. And over time, you stop recognizing your own voice. You begin to wonder, who am I really? What do I believe in? Where do I stand? These are not dramatic questions. They are quiet crises of the soul. And they arrive in the moments when your external smile no longer matches your internal state. When you're praised for being so kind, but inside you feel like a shell. When people say they admire your gentleness, but you know it's not gentleness, it's avoidance. A desire to offend no one, confront nothing, and keep the waters calm, even if it means drowning in silence. People-pleasing is not just emotional exhaustion, it is philosophical disorder. Because in trying to be everything for everyone, you become nothing to yourself. You dilute your beliefs, your preferences, your needs. You replace them with what you think others want you to be. And the more you do it, the harder it becomes to find your way back. Your truth becomes buried under layers of pretense. Your instincts go numb, and the approval you chased so desperately begins to feel hollow, because deep down you know it was never earned through honesty. It was purchased with compliance. Epictetus warned against this very trap. He reminded his students that the only approval that matters is from the inner judge, the rational, ethical voice within. The moment you begin living for the reactions of others, you've handed them the reins to your soul. And once you do that, everything else becomes performative. You begin managing perceptions instead of living in truth. You begin to craft your words for applause instead of integrity. You begin to move through life like an actor in a play you never chose. But a Stoic must choose. A Stoic must decide again and again to live by reason, not reaction. To honor truth, not trends. To accept being misunderstood, disliked, even rejected, if that is the cost of staying loyal to what is right. And yes, it is hard, especially when the world rewards pleasers, when society elevates those who are agreeable, adaptable, and never disruptive. But the Stoic knows that the reward for living in truth is not applause. It is peace. You cannot be kind if you are not honest. You cannot serve others if you constantly betray yourself. You cannot call yourself virtuous if your actions are filtered through the lens of social convenience. And so you must ask yourself, is my kindness real, or is it just a disguise for my fear of disapproval? Do I help because I believe it is right, or because I am terrified of being seen as selfish? Do I remain silent because I am wise, or because I am afraid to lose connection? These are hard questions, but they are necessary, because the moment you begin answering them with courage, you begin returning home to yourself. You begin noticing when your yes should be a no. You begin seeing where your values have been hijacked by your need to be liked, and you begin building the discipline to disappoint others in order to remain loyal to what matters. This is the essence of Stoic virtue. It is not coldness, it is clarity. It is the strength to walk alone when necessary. It is the courage to be kind without being submissive, to be compassionate without being manipulated, to be gentle without being erased. It is the refusal to trade your principles for temporary approval. It is the unshakable choice to live from the inside out, not the outside in. So if you've been nodding along when you should have spoken, smiling when you felt disrespected, helping when you were already drowning, then let this be your moment of reckoning. You are not here to be everyone's favorite. You are here to be rooted, aligned, honest, free. That is what it means to be Stoic in a world addicted to applause. If this spoke directly to a part of you that's been compromised for too long, type this in the comments. Approval is not my compass. And stay ready, because in lesson number 2, we'll dive into how unchecked kindness can actually sabotage your long-term goals and why Stoic focus must never be sacrificed on the altar of constant availability. Lesson 2. constant kindness can sabotage your long-term goals. There is a cost to being constantly available, a hidden price that accumulates not in dollars or hours, but in stolen focus, fractured intention, and eroded momentum. It's the cost of living in reaction, of interrupting your deep work, your personal discipline, your sacred silence, just to answer a message, solve someone else's problem, or soothe a moment of someone else's distress. You tell yourself it's kindness, that it's what a good person does, that you'll get back to your priorities afterward. But afterward never comes. Or when it does, it arrives in fragments, exhausted, unfocused, late. The Stoics knew the weight of attention. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And yet modern kindness often demands that you relinquish that power, that you constantly divert your attention outward, attending to the needs of others before your own intentions have even taken shape. The irony is brutal. In trying to be kind to everyone, you end up neglecting the very disciplines that would make you capable of true, lasting contribution. Because real impact requires depth. It requires uninterrupted time. It requires saying no, not because you do not care, but because you do. Because you know that half presence is a form of disrespect. Because you know that scattered energy cannot build anything meaningful. But if your kindness overrides your structure, if you're always available, always responsive, always attending to the urgent needs of others, then your goals will suffer. Not in dramatic explosions, but in the slow decay of your priorities. You tell yourself you'll work on that project later, that you'll return to that practice when things calm down, that you'll write the book, start the business, rebuild your body, just as soon as everyone else's fires are put out. But the fires never stop. People always need something. And because you've trained yourself to respond instantly, they come to expect it. And when you finally try to claim time for yourself, guilt rises like a wave. It tells you that you are being selfish, that you're letting people down, that being unavailable makes you cold. But the Stoics would call this emotional conditioning, not moral clarity. They would remind you that your time is your life. That every hour you spend reacting to external noise is an hour not spent building the life only you can build. That if you do not guard your purpose, you will trade it away, moment by moment, for the illusion of being needed. There is no virtue in burnout. There is no honor in being constantly interrupted. There is no wisdom in sacrificing your mission for the comfort of others. This is not stoicism. This is servitude. And the harsh truth is this: your long-term vision will not survive if it is constantly subordinated to short-term kindness. Epictetus would ask, what is your nature? What is your role? And if you answer that question honestly, you must protect it. You must build rituals that are sacred. You must carve out blocks of time that are non-negotiable. You must let calls go unanswered. Let messages wait. Let people feel disappointed. Not out of cruelty, but out of commitment. Because if you do not claim your life, the world will take it in pieces. This is not about isolation. It is about boundaries. It is about understanding that you cannot be useful to others if your own structure is falling apart. That real kindness is not reactive. It is strategic. It says, let me finish what I am building so I can serve you better later. It says, I will not dilute my focus just to prove I care. It says, I am present, but not always accessible. You will lose people with this mindset. You will be called distant. You will be labeled cold, but what you gain is far greater. Time, integrity, peace, and most of all, progress. The kind of progress that builds legacies, not just impressions. The kind of progress that leaves a mark, not just a memory of being nice. If you've spent years putting your own goals last, then let this be the moment you reclaim them. You are not here to be constantly available. You are here to fulfill your purpose. That is your duty, not to everyone, but to yourself, and to whatever higher order you believe governs your soul. If this truth hit you deep, write this in the comments. My mission deserves my time. And now, stay with me, because lesson number 1 is the final and most powerful truth. The way the world defines kindness is not the same as the Stoic definition. And if you don't understand the difference, you will be at the mercy of manipulation for the rest of your life. Lesson 1. The world's definition of kindness is not the Stoic one. This is where it all comes together. This is where the illusions are stripped away. Because if you do not understand this one truth, if you keep using the world's definition of kindness, you will never be free. You will spend your life enslaved to opinions, exhausted by performance, and confused by the gap between your good intentions and the emptiness that follows. The modern world tells you that kindness means always saying yes, that it means being agreeable, that it means never making others uncomfortable, that it means shrinking your truth so others can feel safe in theirs. But the Stoics never taught that. And if you mistake emotional comfort for moral clarity, you will be manipulated for the rest of your life. The Stoic view of kindness is something far more demanding and far more liberating. It is not built on image, but on integrity. It does not concern itself with being liked. It concerns itself with living in harmony with nature, with reason, with the duties of the soul. Marcus Aurelius never told himself to keep people happy. He reminded himself daily to be just, courageous, temperate, and wise. Epictetus never said to be soft for the sake of appearance. He said to speak truth, to act with precision, and to let go of what is beyond our control. Seneca never taught emotional submission. He taught that we must rise above praise and criticism alike, and that to live a virtuous life is to live it fully, regardless of how others interpret it. And that is the real challenge, to redefine kindness, not as passivity, but as power under control. Kindness, in the Stoic tradition, is justice in action. It is not simply about how you treat others. It is about how faithfully you treat what is right. That may mean helping the weak. That may also mean refusing the manipulator. That may mean offering forgiveness. That may also mean establishing distance. That may mean understanding someone's pain. That may also mean refusing to let their pain poison your mind. When you let the world define kindness for you, you become exploitable. You become a tool for others' comfort. You begin living as a version of yourself that is engineered to avoid judgment. You act not from principle, but from fear. And that is not compassion. That is cowardice, dressed in empathy. It feels good at first. You're praised. People call you warm, helpful, generous. But slowly you start to notice the toll. Your time evaporates, your peace fractures, your goals slip away. You are thanked with words but forgotten in presence. And worst of all, you begin to disappear from your own life. The Stoics offer a different way. They say, be kind but not at the expense of virtue. Be generous but not at the expense of justice. Be compassionate but not at the expense of reason. True kindness does not flinch in the face of discomfort. It does not silence itself to protect fragile egos. It does not abandon standards to maintain appearances. It is willing to say the hard thing with a calm voice. It is willing to disappoint others in order to remain aligned with the eternal law of the soul. This form of kindness is not flashy. It is not always rewarded. It does not win crowds, but it is clean. It is clear. It allows you to look yourself in the mirror without shame. It allows you to walk through storms with composure. It allows you to hold your ground without cruelty and offer help without attachment. It is not reactive. It is not sentimental. It is principled. So now you must choose. Will you live by the world's definition of kindness and forever remain pliable, confused, and drained? Or will you embrace the Stoic definition and become sharp, compassionate, firm, and free? You cannot do both. If you are ready to reclaim your soul from the emotional chaos of the modern world, write this in the comments: kindness must bow to virtue. And now that you've heard all 9 brutal truths, stay with me. We are about to bring this journey to a close with a reflection that will seal this message in your spirit and give you the fire to apply it every day of your life. So here we are. After 9 brutal truths about how misunderstood kindness can quietly destroy your life, one lesson remains. The decision is now yours. Because knowledge is not transformation. Philosophy is not virtue. Ideas are not freedom. Not until you live them. You've heard the truths. You've felt the sting of recognition. You've seen how unchecked kindness can become a weapon turned inward, sharpened not by malice, but by your own silence. And now, you stand at the threshold that every Stoic must eventually face. Do you continue the way you were taught, to please, to comply, to serve everyone but yourself, or do you choose to return to something far older, far more powerful, and far more difficult? Kindness is not the enemy, but the version of kindness you were sold. That emotional obedience, that unending availability, that soft, fragile submission disguised as virtue, that is not Stoicism. That is not strength. That is not justice. What you've lived, what you've carried, what you've suffered under is not virtue. It is the absence of boundary, of reason, of your rightful position in your own life. The Stoics never told you to be liked. They told you to be in control of yourself, to speak with truth, to act with honor, to live by nature and not by impulse. They never promised that others would understand you. They never said that choosing your peace would be comfortable. In fact, they warned you, the path of virtue is lonely, it is misunderstood, it is slow, but it is clean. And more than that, it is freeing. Because real freedom is not doing what you want. It is no longer being a slave to fear, to guilt, to your own compulsive need to be liked. It is the ability to say, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, and this is where I draw the line. And for you watching this now, maybe it's time to finally draw the line. Maybe it's time to stop letting others write your story in the margins of their expectations. Maybe it's time to stop giving from an empty cup, loving from fear and calling it virtue. Maybe it's time to rebuild, to return to your center, to draw your boundaries, to reclaim your time and energy, not out of anger but out of respect. That is what Ceniza Stoica stands for, not performative strength, not motivational noise, but real clarity, forged in the fires of honest self-examination. Because this path is not for those who want comfort. It is for those who are ready to grow, to confront the parts of themselves they've buried under years of people-pleasing and self-erasure, to remember that they too are worthy of discipline, of stillness, of their own space. And let me be clear, it will not be easy. The moment you begin to change, the world around you will resist. The same people who praised your softness will now question your distance. The ones who benefited from your silence will challenge your voice. But you must stay grounded. You must remember what Epictetus said. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That is the price of real growth, being willing to let go of how people see you so that you can live in truth. And truth is not loud. It is not aggressive. It is not showy. It is calm, steady, unshakable. Like the Stoic within you, waiting to be remembered. Maybe for the first time in your life, you are beginning to see that your kindness was never meant to be your cage, that your empathy is not weakness, but it must be governed, that your love for others is powerful, but only when it flows from a soul that is not running on fumes. And if you take anything from this video, let it be this. The world does not need more people who can smile through pain. It needs more people who live with clarity, who serve without selling themselves, who give without losing their center, who can say no without trembling, who can walk away without guilt. That is the Stoic spirit, and it is alive in you. You will fall, you will relapse into old patterns, you will catch yourself saying yes when you meant no, apologizing for setting a boundary, feeling guilty for protecting your energy. But each time, come back. Come back to your breath. Come back to your reason. Come back to the part of you that remembers. This is not selfishness. This is alignment. You are not here to disappear. You are not here to be digestible. You are not here to meet everyone's needs at the cost of your own soul. You are here to walk with purpose, to serve what is right, to live with structure, intention, and courage, even when it's lonely, even when it hurts. So now take a moment. Breathe. What is one boundary you will honor today? What is one truth you've been afraid to speak? What is one habit of overgiving you're ready to leave behind? Leave your answer in the comments, or simply write this phrase to mark the beginning of your return. Kindness must serve truth. This is Ceniza Stoica, and if this video shifted something in you, if it made you see your habits with new eyes, then do not let the feeling fade. Share this with someone who's lost in the same pattern. Subscribe for more truths like this, and above all, live it, because philosophy that stays on the screen is philosophy wasted, but philosophy that enters your bones becomes freedom. We'll see you in the next one.